Hey guys, this is another weekend late night trial run with Mr. Thomas. I made a YouTube account. I mean, I've had a YouTube account, but I thought I'd try to start uploading videos and maybe do a few a year or just whenever I have time of me answering some of the AP FRQs. And then at the end of the year, we'd have all these different videos of me answering them. Um, in homage to Mr. Clifford. Mr. Clifford used to be ACDC Econ. He's still that, but the reason he was ACDC Econ is because he would do econ concepts in 60 seconds, which I'm not going to do that, but he would play ACDC music in the background. Well, I thought maybe I could be Conway Twitty Econ, and I was trying to play some Conway Twitty in the background, but it wasn't working out. So you're just going to have to look at his beautiful face for this. So the one I'm going to start with is the 2010 AP Macro FRQ, and there's two of them. They used to have forms A and B, so I was just scanning through them, picking some out, and I just went with form B. We could do just about any of them. I'm planning on doing all of them at some point if this works out. But let's run through this. So have the questions pulled up so you can read along with me. I'm going to try to draw on this thing. I've got the questions kind of set up in the way that we're going to answer them, but hopefully I can make it somewhat legible. Please don't make fun of my drawing. So here we go. For number one, this is the 2010 AP Macroeconomics FRQ number one question. So this is the big one. A country's economy is in a short-run equilibrium with an output level less than the full employment output level. Assume an upward sloping aggregate supply curve. So for the first part, using a correctly labeled aggregate demand and aggregate supply graph, show the following. And this is what I tell you guys all the time. This is gonna be the big one for sure. So you have to draw an ADAS model, and you have to show full employment output labeled as YF and equilibrium real output and price level labeled as YE and PLE respectively. So let's go ahead and try to draw this. Wish me luck, and we got to label it correctly. Here we go. That was pretty good so far. No, there we go. Not bad. So over here we always label this as price level. Yep, that's price level. And down here we always label it as real GDP. Let's try doing it this way instead. Let me just add a little text box here. Real GDP. That looks better. And if I can make it smaller. So this is kind of a mix of Khan Academy and Mr. Clifford here. So then we have our upward sloping supply curve, we have our downward sloping demand curve, and the question says that our short run equilibrium with an output level less than full employment output. So if you remember, full employment output is measured by that straight up and down long run aggregate supply curve. Here, let me get some labels on here real quick. Let me put these in the right spots. So this, of course, goes down here. And a lot of times you see this is SRAS, is how we do it, but a lot of times you see it also just AS, which is fine. Doesn't really matter. Okay, so there's our correctly labeled graph. And like I said, LRAS measures full employment output. This is the output we make when we're at that 4% to 6% unemployment rate, which is full employment. And this says that we're making less than full employment. So our GDP is actually less than full employment. So we have to label full employment as YF. So let's get a YF on there. And that is, of course, what I just said. YF goes down here. And then we have our employment real output and price level labeled as, let's see if I can copy and paste that. Yeah, I can, sweet. This one is labeled as YE. And copy and paste that over here. And this one is labeled as PLE. Okay, so let me draw a little line there to connect them. Bam, and bam. Okay, So here is our price level, equilibrium output, and here is our full employment output. Now that is all of part A. Now part B makes you draw on the same graph, which is why I put B over here too. It asks for the equilibrium real output. Nope, JK. I'm reading the same question again. Part B says, assume that the country's government increases domestic military expenditures. On the graph from Part A, show how the increased military expenditures affect the following in the short run. Aggregate demand and equilibrium real output and price level labeled as Y2 and PL2 respectively. This is where I drew it a little differently than the AP grade. Like if you go on the website, you can look at all the actual answer keys. So first off, we know that the, can I grab this line? Nope, can't. I just got to draw a new one. We know that they've increased military spending. So we're going to have increased military spending, government spending, and we know that AD is made up of consumer spending, investment spending, government spending, and net exports. So if government spending increases, aggregate demand increases. So that increased government spending will shift AD to the right. Now, what I typically did, just out of habit, is I shift AD back to where we'd be at a long run equilibrium, like this right here. The test, like the actual AP website, has it shifting it not quite to that point, and I think I'm going to shift it to the point I want to. So I'm going to shift it back here just out of habit because it's not wrong, it's right. Okay, so I've got AD shifting to the right there. Let's copy and paste that and label this 82. Bam. Oh, I got a little extra thing there. Label that 82. Now, we have to label, so I drew what happened to aggregate demand, that's one point. I have to label equilibrium output and price level now labeled as Y2 and PL2. So let's go ahead and label this as PL2. Okay, oh, actually I have to copy, forgot to copy and paste it. So that's copy and paste that up here. So this is PL2. And let's draw a little line over here going to PL2 like that. Oh, that was ugly, but it's okay. Now I think the reason that they drew it coming up short is because they didn't want to label the same point twice. Because as you can see, this is our new equilibrium, and they want us to label that. So this is what I did, and it should be right. I mean, if they counted wrong on the AP test, they're just being buttholes, because this is right. And it should be Y2. Okay, so if you label that like that, something similar to that, you should be fine. Okay, so we labeled it having the aggregate demand, shifted it to the right, and then we have Y2 and PL2. So that's all the points for 1A and 1B. Part C says, using a correctly labeled graph of the short-run Phillips curve, show the effect of the increased military expenditures in the short run, labeling the initial point as A and the new point as B. And this is another one of those where I did it a little differently, and surely they wouldn't take points off for it. I can't imagine that they would, but it's just habit because of what we've been doing so much. So let me go ahead and draw the Phillips curve here. I'm going slow so I can try to draw somewhat straight lines. So Phillips curve is labeled as inflation on the y-axis. Ooh, accidentally drew. So let's move that down here. Let's curve it so it's staying out of the way a little bit. Let's copy and paste it. And then let's label this one as unemployment. We put that on the x-axis. Curve it this way. Bam. Make it a little bigger so we can see it bigger. If you remember, this says on here, using the correctly labeled graph of the short-run Phillips curve. So short-run Phillips curve is downward sloping like this, something like that. Okay, we labeled it SRPC. We put our SRPC right there. And it says, show the effect of the increased military expenditures in the short run, labeling the initial point as A and the new point as B. Now this is where I drew the long, ooh, that was ugly. Try that again. I drew the long run Phillips curve out of habit, which is like this. Okay? You don't have to draw that at all. I did. And what I did was I said, well, initially we were below full employment. So we had high unemployment compared to our full unemployment. So high unemployment, our full employment is this line again on the long run Phillips curve. So we have higher unemployment than our full employment. So I drew A right here, and we label it A. So I put A here, and I shifted it all the way back to long run equilibrium. So I drew B right here. Okay, B, put B right here. And this is right. Like, this is 100% right. Because as you can see, when the AD shifts, if you remember, when AD shifts, it causes us to move along this curve because there's an inverse relationship between inflation and unemployment. See, price levels went up, unemployment goes down. If price level goes down, unemployment goes up whenever you shift the AD curve. Okay, so we shift the AD curve, and that causes us to move like leftward or upward along the Phillips curve. Okay, the AP test scoring guidelines, they just had it to where you don't have this on here at all, which again, I get it because it didn't tell you to draw the long run Phillips curve, but I can't imagine that they'd say it's wrong if you have the long run Phillips curve. Too much information is fine as long as it doesn't contradict the information that you have. So either way, that's fine. Okay, but this is all they technically need. Okay, let's go to the next one. D, assume that the increased military spending is financed through government borrowing. What will happen to the real interest rate? Explain. Now, you don't have to draw a graph for this, but I'm going to, just to kind of illustrate the point. Okay, so real interest rates are shown on, and I'm not going to label stuff because that will just save me some time because I don't actually have to draw the graph, are drawn. Real interest rates are on the loanable funds graph. So we have supply and demand for loanable funds, and we have our real, this is real bad, that's what it is. It looks like raw. That was supposed to be an R and then an E. Anyway, real interest rates over here. That was real bad. Real interest rates over here on the y-axis, and it says that the government increases this military or increase the military spending, and they use financed it through government borrowing. So we're saying the government borrowed it. Well, government get loans is what they're essentially saying. And if the government needs more loans, that increases the demand for loans, which causes crowding out. But that doesn't have anything to do with this problem, and that causes the real interest rates to shift up. So you just need to write something along those lines that government financing the military spending increases the demand for loans, increasing the real interest rate. Let's see what that looks like on here. And I spelled something wrong. What did I spell wrong? Yep. That was ugly. Government financing. There we go. So there's your point for there. Again, you didn't have to draw the graph, but it just helped to make sense. So government financing the military spending increases the demand for loans, increasing the real interest rate. Last question says, assume that the economy produces only two goods, military goods and civilian goods. Using a correctly labeled production possibilities curve, show the effect of the increase in military expenditures from part B, labeling the initial point as C and the new point as D. Now this is one that I did. A little peek behind the curtain. I did this before I started writing on here just to kind of make sure I had it all lined up and knew what I was doing. So, and this one got me. And it makes sense. Had I taken it slower, I would have gotten it. But I went too quick. So, oh, my son's starting to cry. Hold on a second. Just turn the monitor down. He'll be fine. So we got to draw our PPC here. So our PPC is this graph. It looks like this. And we have to label one axis as military goods. It doesn't really matter which one. Label this one as military goods, and then label the other one as civilian goods. Okay, so we'll move those down here. I'll put civilian goods down here on the bottom. put my military goods up here on the top. Now these two things have increasing opportunity costs because they're not made from the same stuff, so that gives us a bowed out curve. Oh, a bowed out curve like that. That's much better. Okay. Now what I did, and this is wrong, is I thought, okay, well, we're making more military goods, so we shift from this point to this point. I labeled this one C and this one D. Well, this is wrong. And the thing that I just completely forgot about is, if you remember, we are not at full employment here. We have high unemployment. So we are not being efficient. So point C is down here. It's inside the curve. Okay? And we are making more military goods. Okay? And we're not making anything. It doesn't say anything about making more civilian goods. So, our civilian goods don't actually increase. So we just go straight up from here. And that's how it should be. Okay, let me label these really quick. It says label point C and point D. Ooh, not JD, D. Okay, so we point C here inside the curve because we have high unemployment. And then we put point D out here because now we are back at full employment. And we are making more military goods because of that, financing the military expenditures. Okay, so if you went through the grading, I'm pretty sure we'd get all the points on this one. I know we'd get all the points on this one because I looked through the scoring guide a while back. So, oh, he went back to sleep. We're good. Anyway, so if you have any questions on this one, let me know. Hopefully this makes sense and these graphs aren't too terrible. I think if I do it on my iPad, I can get a stylus and do it a little bit better. But right now I'm just drawing with a mouse pad on my laptop. But hopefully this went well. And if you have any questions, let me know. Good luck.